Hello. Surprise Pittsburgh postgame. Penguins 1, Bruins nothing. I'm Matt Gajtka. It's a solo show this afternoon. And so I won't have any guests, obviously, but I do want to talk about the weekend sweep the Penguins just pulled off. A sweep in a modified term here, with the Devils being the victims on Saturday. And then this Sunday afternoon at PPG Paints Arena, another win, a more impressive win just because of the quality of competition. And I hear so many people talking about how they're afraid of the Bruins in the first round of the playoffs. Avoid the Bruins. They have Taylor Hall. I'll admit, that's a nice addition. He's been great for them, and he really scratches right where they were itching when you talk about their offensive depth and their ability to be more than just a one-line team. But you know what? I see no reason why the Penguins shouldn't be the favorites to come out of the East Division playoffs once we get there in a couple of weeks' time. A reminder, this is interactive sports talk. Hockey talk. So let me know what you think about the game, where the Penguins stand right now in the East, where they stand overall in the NHL, by chiming in via YouTube, via Periscope on Twitter, and also streaming live to my Facebook, Matt Gajtka Media channel too. The Penguins are tied for third with the Florida Panthers for the most points in the NHL in that overall standings list. You see the Golden Knights are on top. You also see in that same what do you want to call it? Central Division. I keep forgetting the names of the divisions this year. No, I'm not using the corporate names. Believe me, the Hurricanes have one more point than the Pens, and the Panthers, as I mentioned, at 67 points, tied with the Penguins. And only the Golden Knights and the Hurricanes have more points than the Pens right now. Yes, the Hurricanes have a couple of games in hand on the Pens, who have now played 49. But Pittsburgh's won 6 in a row. They took care of business against the Devils despite that hiccup in the third period of the Tuesday night game. So, yeah, it's not without blemish, but this is the NHL, and this is hockey. This is not a sport where the superior team always runs away with things. You have to, in some ways, fight through bad luck, bad bounces. In many cases, the Penguins included, of course, still missing Evgeny Malkin. You have to fight through injuries, too. And they have done it. They're now 8-1-1 in their last 10. They're on top of the East for now. The Capitals are 1 point back. The Islanders now 4 points back. So maybe it's going to be versus Caps to see who earns that top seed in the East Division for what that's worth. But for how well they're playing structurally, for how well they are playing opportunistically, and also just overall controlling play, today was a great example of where the Pens are at right now. And it's a full credit to Mike Sullivan and his coaching staff, and for the leadership too. A guy like Sidney Crosby, who obviously always leads by example, but we're seeing that be even more effective right now. You want to talk about high danger scoring chances, which I often do, in addition to just regular old scoring chances. Well, at 5-on-5 in this game, and it was all 5-on-5 for the most part until the final 2 minutes, the scoring chances in the high danger area were 11 for the Penguins and 2 for the Bruins. So it really wasn't close when you are talking about controlling the area of the ice that's the most important, the area between the circles, between the hash marks, in the house, the Royal Road, whatever you want to call it. The Penguins were there a lot more often in the Bruins end than vice versa. And we saw Taylor Hall in a Bruins jersey for the first time playing against the Penguins. And yeah, there were flashes there, but the Bruins don't look to me like a world beater. They still look like a team that could use some refinement, and there's still time to get ready for the playoffs. And as we all know, a team like the Bruins with veterans in its lineup can certainly flip the switch or come close to doing so. Now, we've said the same thing about the Penguins in recent seasons, and that hasn't happened. I'm going to go ahead and take last season out of the equation. But going back 2 years, they weren't playing very well in the 2018-19 season, and it carried over into the playoffs. They were undisciplined. They weren't playing as a cohesive unit, 5 men out there on the ice covering for each other and having chemistry, which is necessary in today's game. It's not 3 forwards and 2 defensemen. It's 5 skaters. And especially with some of the players the Penguins have, your Mike Mathesons, your Chris Letang's, the forwards have to be ready to cover up and to fill in positions and play that total hockey, if you will. And I'm not sure the Penguins have ever played better than they are playing over the past several games under Mike Sullivan. And again, I'll allow that third period against the Devils on Tuesday was unsightly, but I think a lot of that was on Tristan Jarry, which brings me to my next point here on today's show. Tristan Jarry coming through big after that rough third period 3 games ago, 2 starts ago for him, in fact. Casey DeSmith got the start yesterday, Saturday, against the Devils, as we expected. But I even said on this program, a couple of games ago, that I would see more from Casey DeSmith down the stretch. But even though Jarry wasn't challenged a whole bunch. The Bruins were credited with, according to Natural Stat Trick, 1.28 expected goals today. So it wasn't like it was an offensive barrage from Boston. But at the same time, Jari got the shutout, stopped all 30 shots. And it's a type of game, too, where the pressure builds on the goalie who is nursing that lead late in the game. And you saw the Bruins with possession time, with the extra skater out there before they took the penalty and before things broke down for them in the end. But those are scary moments. Those are moments where the game can get away from you, or at least you could go into overtime. A couple of comments here. Gaming with Geo says, let's go Pens. Finally, glad we shut the toxic Bruins fans up, or at least momentarily. Toxic Bruins fans. Boston fans being toxic and annoying and abrasive. Wow, I've never heard of that in my life before. It's Walt Flanagan says, good afternoon, Matt. Yeah, still good afternoon. Still before dinner time, I suppose, if you are not an early bird. Great win. Screw Beantown. I'm sensing the animosity here, and the Penguins will get another chance to perhaps jeopardize the Bruins' playoff chances. They're just 6 points up on the Rangers. It's not over yet. The Penguins get another shot to keep them down in that fourth position at the very least and keep them precariously in the East final playoff spot coming up here on Tuesday night, 7 o'clock start, before they head on to Washington, talking about the Penguins, of course. So here's the opportunity here again to send a message against a team they could very easily play in the first round of the playoffs. And if they hold off the Capitals, talking about the Penguins, of course, if they hold off the Caps for the top spot, it's likely to be the Bruins, it appears, in the first round of the playoffs. And wouldn't that be fun? I've been waiting for that matchup for a long time, not just as redemption for the 2013 East Final. That's ancient history at this point. Goodness, it really is. It's been 8 years. And go back and watch some clips from that game and remember some guys, as Deadspin used to put it. But neither here nor there. I think that the Bruins have been as consistent as any team in the East. They don't have the cups of the Penguins since the full season lockout, but they've been right there. They missed the playoffs, once, I think, over that span, possibly twice. I think they missed the playoffs the first season after the lockout, Crosby's rookie year, Bergeron just coming on the scene there as well. And they missed the playoffs in Claude Julien's final season a couple of years ago. But under Bruce Cassidy, they've been very good offensively with the exception of this year. But they maintain that structure that they had under Julien, and they've built on that. Now they add Taylor Hall here. Craig Smith is catching fire for them, an offseason addition, which I liked a great deal. But you know what? They don't have Zdeno Chara back there anymore. I know he's old, but at the same time, he was a bedrock leadership-wise, and he still ate some minutes. Maybe not as much as he used to, but who would be eating as much as he used to? He'd play half the game or more in his prime. And also Tuukka Rask. No offense to him at all. I think he's a great goalie. I think he's been a great competitor over the years for the Bruins and one of the best goaltenders in the league for a long stretch. But we've seen him in and out of the lineup. We see the Bruins go to a backup a couple of times in this season series. It was Dan Vladar 2 or 3 matchups ago in Pittsburgh, who actually shut the Penguins down. But I don't fear any of these backups necessarily. And even Tuukka Rask isn't going to be at top form. At least I wouldn't expect him to be in the first round of the playoffs. So again, to reiterate my point at the top of the show, I don't fear Boston at all. I say bring on Boston. The only team that I think would cause me some concern, some trepidation in that first round would be the Islanders, just because of the way they play. They play playoff hockey all season long, and their structure. Speaking of structure, I talked about the Penguins being on their P's and Q's there. The Islanders are always on their P's and Q's, and their I's are dotted and their T's are crossed, because if you play for Barry Trotz, that's the way it has to be, or you don't play. And they don't really have, outside of Matthew Barzal, who's, I call him a star, maybe not a superstar, but they don't have that top-end talent. They add Travis Zajac at the deadline, so a good addition for them, and for him to get out of New Jersey. But they're missing Anders Lee, who's probably their most prolific finisher, I would say, over the past 5 or 6 seasons, and also just a bull in front of the net. So they're missing him, but at the same time, the structure remains. And the Isles are pretty deep. They're pretty consistent across 4 lines and 3 defense pairings. Goaltending could be a question, I suppose, but a lot of times goaltending isn't your biggest worry. Most times goaltending isn't your biggest worry when you're playing against the Isles. So that's the team that I think would be the toughest matchup. I just want to mention that, not to bring it up out of nowhere. We still have a little bit to go before the playoffs begin. But I heard so often this week on the radio stations around town, in social media as well, that you don't want to play the Bruins. The Penguins have a bad history against the Bruins. They just won for the first time at TD Garden in forever. Earlier, what was it, last month, I want to say. right at the end of March. So they've gotten that taken care of. And if you do worry about a mental strain, the mental block of playing up in Boston, they even got that out of the way here. And not that it's going to be easy against a team like the Bruins. As you saw, it was still 1-0 today. But the Penguins did everything but put a few goals on the board in this one. You saw Jeff Carter, Jared McCann, Jake Gensel probably going to be a little more selfish there at the end of the game on a 2-on-1 rush with Sid. Ended up passing it to him below the goal line. Even Sid's not that good to one-time it in from that angle. But Gensel keeps it up. And, well, you speak of the top line, and usually you think about the Bruins in that regard, right? The so-called perfection line with Marchand and Bergeron and Pasternak. But the Penguins have, well, maybe not perfect, but a really outstanding top line, in case you haven't noticed at this point. And they come through again in a tight checking game. There was some frustration early in this one, but I'm not sure how many players in the NHL finished that Crosby pass like Jake Gensel did to give him 21 on the season, and once again come close to putting the Milkshake Factory out of business. All three players on that top line, Rust, Crosby, and Gensel, have 20-plus goals. All three of them can set things up, too. Maybe Rust is more of the purest finishing type of guy on that line, less a playmaker, more of a finisher. But you know Gensel loves to make the right play, has the high hockey IQ, in addition to the elite shooting talent, which at this point is legit. And I think analytically minded Penguins fans and hockey fans like myself like to point to shooting talent, shooting ability as being something that tends to normalize over time. And it does normalize, but you do have guys who are outliers, players like Alex Ovechkin, of course. Players like Jake Gensel, who've shown an ability to shoot in and around 20% over the course of his NHL career. And believe it or not, this is Jake's 5th NHL season. He's missed some games due to COVID, of course, and no lockouts yet, crossing our fingers on that one. But at the same time, he's got a representative sample size and then some, regular season and playoffs. And Gensel continues to be the type of guy you can count on. Even if he's not getting the high quantity of shots, he's going to put a lot of quality on those shots when he gets the opportunity. As you saw today, nothing Swanson could do on that rip from Gensel from the left circle after Crosby gave him the puck, and not a great area to score, quite honestly. And there was a Bruin right in his face, but Gensel still ripped it top shelf. And all it takes is one or two moments like that in a playoff series to make the difference, as we well know. As we saw with Jake Gensel in his rookie year, 2017, it's not an exaggeration to say he was the reason the Penguins went all the way, because they added him to either the Crosby line or the Malkin line, and suddenly more of those passes from your superstar centers are going in the net. This is Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Great to chat with you guys. Dave Gormley says once they get fully healthy, watch out. I agree. Even right now, watch out. The Penguins are playing as well as we've seen them with Crosby in the lineup in a long, long time. Remember last season, before the pandemic, the Penguins were playing great, but it was without Sid. And you always wonder, are the players just a little bit more focused and thus more likely to listen to Sullivan and the coaching staff when Sid is out because they know they have to or they think they have to? It's all a psychological game in that way. I think there's some truth to that. It's hard to pin down exactly how much, but I wouldn't dismiss that out of hand. But to see them with Sid, without Malkin, obviously, but Sid is the bell cow, to use a Mike Tomlinism. He's the guy, and he has been the guy for 16 seasons and will be for at least a few more years here in Pittsburgh. So when he's in and the team is buying in and doing all the right things, I think that's impressive, and it says a lot about their mindset. Jackson Hollister says, I'm pretty sure the Pens are the only team with 3 players that have at least 20 goals as well, all of which are on the first line. I think you're right. I'm not entirely sure on that one. I was going to say Edmonton, but it's the big 2 there, and then everybody else. It's McDavid and Draisaitl, and then, well, we'll see who can hang with them in that regard. And I would have said Boston, too, but they've had some injuries. Pasternak was out for a while at the start of the season. It's Walt Flanagan. Another comment from him. Let's go to him. Jeff Carter. Yeah, Carter had a sweet setup of Jason Zucker in the second period today, but Carter's been a great pickup, and he scored yesterday as well. The real acquisition this year has been the Penguins playing the right way, though. And yeah, right. It's not about individual players necessarily. It's about cohesiveness. And I was a little concerned about Jeff Carter. I don't know if he could, first of all, handle the type of minutes they'd be thrown at right away with Malkin being out. But second of all, he's really declined when you look at just chance generation, not finishing alone, which has been his calling card or one of them over the course of his career. But he hasn't been on top of his game in a couple of different ways. So the Penguins playing the right way and listening to the darn coach, says Walt. Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that at all. And as I've said, this looks like a Pens team that's ready to go. And I honestly would say I think they would rather just start the playoffs very soon, this week or possibly next. Of course, they'll have to play a couple of more weeks here before we do get to the postseason and see who that matchup's going to be. Remember, it's all divisional playoffs this year, as it has been all division in the regular season. Such an interesting season in that regard. John Smith says, extremely encouraging effort after playing yesterday. Yeah, that's right. There wasn't a ton of jump from these guys, but you saw still Kasperi Kapanen, perhaps benefiting from the fact that he hasn't played in a couple of weeks coming into this series of games. He still had some movement, I guess you could say some quickness in some short spaces, but also still those long, powerful strides of his. He's fun to watch play, and I think he was in a lot of ways an energy provider this weekend for sure. When they commit, says John Smith, continuing on with that comment, they can defend as well as anybody. Pundits talking like Washington and the Isles are the only contenders was always a bad take. Hey, I confess, and I was talking about this with Ryan Wilson on Thursday's show here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, that I was skeptical about the Penguins' ability to get things together this season. And then Jim Rutherford quits. They have to change leadership mid-stride. Early February was when Brian Burke and Ron Hextall were brought aboard by David Morehouse. And I was wondering what they were going to do. It turned out not a lot, but the Jeff Carter addition, to Walt Flanagan's point, has been a winner so far. And I'd rather you not tinker too much with what has become a winning formula since the start of February. The Penguins have the best record in the league, in fact, just edging out the Avalanche and the Golden Knights since the start of February. Wolf Gaming says the little things Ceci and Matheson are doing don't get noticed and praised enough about. I would love to see Ceci signed after the season along with Zach Aston Reese. I'm starting to wonder if Cody Ceci is pricing himself out of Pittsburgh, but I've enjoyed his time here, and he's playing in a role that's manageable. As we've talked about on this show before, he doesn't need to take on the best player on the other team or the best players. He can be the guy who goes out there against the second best line or the third best line and can generate offense on his own. As we've seen, he's got a good shot, an accurate shot. I want to say he's in the NHL's top 20 among defensemen for getting his shots on target, on net. That's important. You don't have to be an expert in this sport to know that, but it certainly helps when you're a forward and you know if I set the screen, if I go to the front of the net and I'm going to take a beating, I know this is going to be on net, and if it doesn't go in, there will be a rebound available. That says a lot, right? If you've played hockey, you realize how frustrating it can be when you fight to get to the high traffic spots and the defenseman or whoever who has the puck ends up shooting it over the net. It goes off the corner boards and it's out to center. It's frustrating. It's not like it's a complete deal breaker in terms of having a teammate, because someone like Chris Letang, who paints the glass quite a bit with his shots, yeah, there are other attributes there that are valuable. But in that small sample size and those little moments, like I talked about, that can turn a game or a series, get the puck on net, right, and find a way to get it through. That's a skill. It may seem simple, but it's really not if you've seen how teams and players commit to shot blocking these days. Oiva Johannes says, Matt, what's your lineup when Malkin and Tanev come back? And he also says, love your work. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that, sir or ma'am. Don't see an avatar here on my screen. But anyway, Malkin and Tanev, right. I'd like to keep those two together because I think that has been an effective line when together. That's my initial impression right now. And then you can play Zucker with perhaps Jeff Carter on the third line, and that's a pretty potent third line. Two guys who have a history of scoring and assisting, honestly, when you talk about Carter, in volume over the course of their NHL careers. And I think Zucker could afford to just have a consistent line mate, and if you play him with Carter right now, then you just bump those guys down. And I think Brandon Tanev has given us enough this year, enough of a sample size with Malkin when he has gotten the opportunity to say that he can keep up, and he has hands that are better than perhaps we thought. Even early in the season, when it looked like he was trying to find the sight on that rifle, if you will, he's been better since, or he was until he got injured. But the problem with Tanev, though, is both he and Malkin, in fact, they're missing a lot of time. So perhaps that's putting too much of a burden on both of them to carry each other when they come back in the lineup. So I wouldn't be surprised to see either way. I suppose all things being equal, and if you think both guys are sharp, then yeah, play them together. Put Tanev on Malkin's wing. Give him a guy who can be that puck retriever. And like I said, hopefully if Tanev is okay and he's able to use that signature skill of his, which is skating, then yeah, go get those pucks for Gino. Get him the puck. And he doesn't have to go in and forecheck and do a lot of things that would sap him of his energy as he does get into his mid-30s. That's part of it too, let's be honest, as well. Good talking with all of you today. If I don't get any more comments, I guess we can just move on to Tuesday night's game. Like I mentioned, the Penguins have won 4 in a row. They've won 8 of 10. And I think they're the favorite to come out of the East Division. That's the conclusion I've come upon. It's not one that I come upon easily. It's been prove-it time for me for the Penguins this season. And to their credit, they have proven it in a huge way. And I can't say enough about the leadership of this team and also the foot soldiers too. And Tristan Jarry, hey, you proved me wrong, buddy. And I hope you continue to do so, because if Jarry's playing well, he has the higher ceiling with he and DeSmith being the two compared there. DeSmith is good, don't get me wrong, and he's been very consistent, more consistent than his battery mate there. But with Jarry, he's got that athleticism that can steal a goal, can steal a game, can steal a series even if he gets hot. So let's not forget about Tristan Jarry, the 30-save shutout, playing well against the Bruins, and he barely gotten a chance to play against the Bruins in his career, and he hadn't done well against them coming into this season. Takes care of business on home ice, as do the Penguins. 1-0 today after 4-2 yesterday against the Devils. Thank you so much for watching, whether it be live or on the archive version. A reminder, I keep forgetting to do this whenever I close one of these shows, but like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Go to the bottom of the page here. Click subscribe. Also, click that bell for notifications whenever I go live. I didn't publicize this show today, so I just went with it off the cuff. I didn't get a chance to watch the entire game, missed the first period. And some of the second, too, if I'm being honest. But at the same time, I wanted to talk about it with you, especially since I didn't get a chance to chat with you after the win against the Devils in the 3-game sweep against New Jersey. Not only are the Penguins taking care of business, but they're also punching at and above their weight here as we get closer and closer to the postseason. Hope to talk to you on Tuesday as the Pens wrap up this 2-gamer against Boston. As I said, always a pleasure to talk to you. God bless. Have a great rest of your weekend and a great start to your week. Find me on Twitter at Matt Gajtka, MattGajtk.